My wife and I met on a blind date. The first time we saw each other, we both swore we'd never been in a serious relationship. After getting to know each other for a few months, we were both sold. A year after the wedding, our daughter was born, and life settled into a rhythm, simple and warm. That is, until recently. She started dressing up again, staying out for dinner. A seed of suspicion began to sprout. I was at the kitchen sink, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing a pan, when the sound of the front door opening told me Violet was home. I turned. She was standing in the doorway, wearing a black slip dress. I frowned, taking in her outfit. "You've been getting home so late lately." I skipped my usual, "Did you eat?" and went straight to the complaint, letting my frustration show. Violet was a kindergarten teacher. She used to be home right after school. But for the last month, she'd been rolling in at 7 or 8 o'clock 2 or 3 times a week. It wasn't normal. "Sorry," she said. "We got a new teacher at school, and she's really enthusiastic, always organizing staff dinners." She came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "I know it's been hard on you, handling everything with the baby alone." A faint, unfamiliar perfume wafted from her, and my stomach dropped to the floor. They say a woman's intuition is sharp, but a man's isn't half bad either. What kind of work dinner required perfume? I didn't ask. Once a woman starts lying, she'll just bury you in more lies until you finally tear everything down. I'd have to find out the truth myself. Later that night, after our daughter was asleep, I reached for Violet. I'm an indie author, and recently, the market has been flooded with stories about ex-wives groveling for a second chance after a divorce. I'd even tried writing one myself, to mediocre success. But the research for that book had been educational. For example, if a woman is cheating, her body will instinctively reject her husband. Violet and I had been married for 3 years. All I had to do was place my hand where it belonged, and she knew what I wanted. To my relief, she didn't pull away. It calmed my nerves just a little. I was relentless that night, channeling all my recent frustration with her late nights into it. Cheating or not, our life was becoming unbalanced. The problems of ordinary people aren't always about infidelity. It's the daily grind, the bills and the chores that forms the backdrop of a life. Because I work from home, writing my novels, the housework naturally fell to me. Violet left for school early, so I'd get her daughter fed, then do the laundry, clean the house. An hour would vanish just like that. I'd sit down on my laptop, struggle to get 2 hours of writing in, and then it was time for our daughter's lunch, her nap, or afternoon snack. By the end of the day, I'd barely had any quiet time to write. Violet's month-long disappearing act had wrecked my writing schedule. My readers were getting restless, leaving comments asking if I was about to ghost them on the story. But that night of passion didn't erase my doubts. The next day, I dropped our daughter off at my parents' house. Around the time Violet's school let out, I took an Uber and had the driver park a little ways down the street from her car. When Violet drove off, I told the driver to follow her. About 15 minutes later, her car pulled into the parking lot of Target. I put on a face mask and followed her from a distance. I watched her walk inside, and then I saw her meet a man. They didn't hold hands or anything, but they stood close, too close. Closer than the safe distance between a man and a woman who were just friends. In that moment, I knew my marriage was over. After I graduated from college, my parents, just like my aunts and uncles did with my cousins, started pushing me into the dating scene. I resisted at first. Who doesn't dream of a romance that starts with a spark, something magical? I imagined meeting my future wife like this. I discover some hidden gem of a speakeasy and meet a beautiful, witty bartender. After a few weeks of trading stories over the counter, I'd finally work up the nerve to ask her out. She'd mix me a drink called The Last Word, lean in, and whisper, "If you can walk out of here straight after drinking this, I'll take you for a late-night steak dinner." I'd confidently down the cocktail, only to wake up the next morning realizing it was all just a dream. So I caved. I went on the blind date. My first and only setup was with Violet. She was 3 years older than me, 25 to my 22. They say an older woman knows what she wants. She looked like a classic good girl, pretty in a way that made you look twice in a crowd. The 3-year gap was nothing. I still remember the first thing I said to her. "My parents basically forced me to be here." She gave a shy smile. "Wow, me too." The awkwardness evaporated. We just started talking. We talked about our jobs, our hobbies, our habits, places we'd been, music we liked. She said she loved that Virgos were so clean and organized. I told her the date on my driver's license was a typo. I was totally a Virgo. She said she'd never really dated anyone, and this was her first blind date. So, she was nervous. I said, "Same here," while secretly celebrating inside. As a guy who'd never been with anyone, I admit I was hoping for the same in a partner. Call me old-fashioned, but it mattered to me. The conversation with Violet was so easy that I wanted to see her again. Besides, if this didn't work out, It was just back to the endless parade of setups. With some gentle prodding from the mutual friend who'd set us up, we shyly exchanged numbers. Having zero dating experience, the next day I was on Google, searching how to ask a girl out, ways to impress a girl, dating tips for clueless guys. I did my homework. We saw each other for a few months and got along great. With both our families pushing for a wedding, we got engaged after 6 months. Right before the engagement party, during her winter break, I invited her on a trip to Napa Valley. During that trip, she became mine. That little smudge of red on the white hotel sheets put all my anxieties to rest. I thought we'd be this happy forever. I trailed them through the aisles of Target, watching them fill a cart with household supplies. I didn't rush in to make a scene. Not yet. I stayed back, discreetly taking photos with my phone. I didn't know if they'd hold up in court, but they would be enough to prove to her parents that Violet was the one who had betrayed our marriage. When they had paid and were heading for the exit with their bags, I made my move. I tripped right as I passed the other guy, sending him sprawling to the ground. Then I planted my foot on his chest and yelled, "Somebody help. This guy's messing with my wife." Immediately, a crowd of onlookers gathered, mostly older folks with nothing better to do. A few of them already had their phones out recording. Violet recognized my voice. "Frank," she shrieked. "Get off of him." I shoved her away. "Stay out of this." My rule about not hitting women only applied when I was in love with them. The man on the ground struggled to get up. I grabbed one of the shopping bags and dumped its contents, soap, sponges, laundry detergent, all over him. Then I grabbed Violet by the arm and dragged her out of there. Sometimes I miss the old days. The Wild West. Cheaters got what was coming to them. Now, if you so much as slap the guy, you risk getting arrested. A solid punch could land you in jail. That's why I chose a public place. In a crowd like that, his first thought wouldn't be to call the cops. It would be how to escape the circle of gawking grandmas. In the car, Violet was silent. It was only when she realized I wasn't driving toward our house that she spoke. "Frank, where are you going?" "What happened to Frank?" "A minute ago, it was just my name. Now I'm your husband again." She looked down, her voice small. "You just jumped out and attacked him." I was scared. "Oomph." As we drove on, she saw I was heading toward her parents' neighborhood. Panic flared in her eyes. "Frank, why are you going to my parents' house?" "To talk about the divorce, of course," I said coldly. "Let's get it all out in the open at once. Save your parents from calling me later to ask what happened." She lunged for the steering wheel. "Frank, you've got it all wrong. I wasn't cheating. Let's just go home and I'll explain everything. Okay? It's not what you think," she pleaded desperately. "He's just a friend. He just moved into a new place and doesn't have a car, so I was just helping him move some stuff. That made me even angrier. You were going to his place? The two of you, alone in his new apartment?" The imaginary green glow above my head felt blinding. "If you want to die, grab the wheel again. We'll crash, and this will all be over," I snarled, seeing a red light ahead with no cross traffic. I gunned it and blew right through the intersection. The car was in her name anyway. The ticket would be her problem. That stopped her. She shrank back in her seat, continuing to plead her case from a safe distance. "Violet," I said, my voice ice, "you lied to me about work dinners. You were out shopping with another man. You were going to his house. Do you think I'm a complete idiot? I'm telling you, unless that man is your parents' long-lost secret son, this marriage is over. And if he is, he better be at the clinic with you tomorrow for a paternity test, with me watching. Being a writer gives you a wild imagination." I was furious, but marriage isn't simple, especially with a child involved. Kids from broken homes have it rough. If there was some crazy 1 in a million chance she wasn't cheating, I was willing to kneel on a bed of nails and apologize. But she just fell silent again, and that told me everything. In a matter of minutes, we were parked in front of her parents' house. "Frank, please, let's just go home," she begged. "I swear to you, I didn't cheat. If I did, I hope I drop dead." She was genuinely desperate now, resorting to curses and oaths. And my heart turned completely to stone. Her reaction told me my crazy misunderstanding scenario was just a fantasy. I'd known her for years. Her parents were decent, principled people. If they found out Violet had cheated, all hell would break loose in their family. But what did that have to do with me anymore? I wasn't the one who had messed up. Why should I be the one to suffer in silence? I got out of the car. Violet scrambled out after me, grabbing my arm, trying to pull me back. But a man's strength is a man's strength. I shook her off, my voice a low, sharp command. "If you want every one of your parents' neighbors to know what you've been up to, just keep making a scene." That worked. She let go, slumping like a defeated fighter, her eyes filled with sorrow. We went upstairs. Her father greeted me warmly when he saw me, though his face fell a little when he realized our daughter wasn't with me. With more families having only one child these days, a granddaughter from a daughter is just as precious as one from a son. "Mr. Hayes," I said, cutting straight to the point. I'm divorcing Violet. No preamble, no softening the blow. I just dropped the bomb. Her parents stared at me, stunned. Why? Did you and Vi have a fight? Her father asked. Every couple has disagreements. You can't just. Her mother began, their first instinct to play peacemaker. I had no patience for it. I cut them off. Violet cheated on me. I showed them the video on my phone, the two of them in Target, looking like a couple. For the last month, Violet has been telling me she's working late, going to staff dinners. In reality, she's been with this man. I didn't. Violet cried out from the side. And then my father-in-law slapped her across the face. Hard. The sudden violence stunned me. I'd expected him to yell at her, to try to talk me down, but I never imagined he would hit her. A thought flashed through my mind. Sir, I said, do you know this man? Her father didn't answer, but her mother spoke up. Frank, that man is one of Violet's old high school classmates. Violet is a good girl, she pleaded. Maybe she was foolish and got a little too close to him, but I promise you, she's not the kind of woman who would cheat. Violet rushed to my side, grabbing my hand. Honey, please believe me. I really didn't cheat. We just haven't seen each other in years. He got transferred here for work and doesn't know anyone, so I was just helping him move. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd get the wrong idea. Oh, you're so kind. I sneered, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Neglecting your own daughter to help another man move. For a whole month. That story makes me want to puke. You know what? I'm done with this, I said, shaking my head. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the courthouse. We're filing for divorce. The house was mine before we got married, so it's mine. As for assets, we each take a car. The money your parents gave you as a wedding gift is in your account. You keep it. Don't even think about anything else. I won't even ask for child support for our daughter. From now on, it's best if we never see each other again. Just looking at you makes me sick. I turned and stormed out. And stay here tonight. If I go home and see your face, I can't guarantee I won't get Violet. I slammed the door behind me. I heard my father-in-law start to say something, but it ended in a long, heavy sigh. The next morning, at the county courthouse, Violet showed up with the other man. Her eyes were red and swollen the moment she saw me. She must have called and texted me all night. I'd only sent one reply. If you're not there tomorrow, I'll make sure every single one of your relatives knows you cheated. Then I put my phone on silent. Honey, please, let's not do this, she begged. I brought Cole here. I swear, nothing happened between us. I wanted him to explain it to you himself. She was so distraught she looked like she was about to drop to her knees. I almost laughed out of sheer rage. Violet had truly lost her mind, daring to bring her lover right in front of me. He should be thanking the legal system that I couldn't just stab him. Cole Gardner reached out to help Violet up. I shot my hand out and grabbed his wrist, squeezing with all the strength I had. After Violet and I are divorced, you can do whatever you want. But right now, she's still my wife. Don't you dare touch her in front of me. Cole rubbed his wrist, a flicker of resentment in his eyes, though his face still wore a mask of gentle remorse. A small scrape from yesterday's fall was visible on his cheek. You're divorcing Violet because of me, aren't you? He said softly. I never wanted to break up your family. I was Violet's first love, he continued, his voice oozing sincerity. We were together for a little while in high school, but we broke up after graduation and lost touch for almost 10 years. We ran into each other by chance recently. I just bought a place, and since I don't have a car, moving has been tough. Violet was just being kind and helping me out. I honestly never thought it would cause you two to divorce. I came here today specifically to clear things up. I won't bother you or Violet again. He even gave a little bow. Anyone who didn't know the situation might actually think he was a decent guy. Honey, Violet said, her eyes filled with hope. A small crowd was starting to gather near the courthouse entrance. I didn't want to be the main attraction. I pulled Violet aside. Violet, I said, my voice serious but calm. The most important thing between a husband and wife is trust. The moment I found out you lied to me, that trust was gone. I'm only 26. I have a long life ahead of me, and I don't want to spend the rest of it drowning in suspicion and misery. I paused, letting that sink in. Then I offered a small, calculated olive branch. But for our daughter's sake, I'm willing to give you a chance. After we divorce, you can still come see her. We'll give each other a chance to start over, to get to know each other again. If we can rebuild that trust, maybe we can remarry. Then I added the threat. But if you push me right now, I have no idea what I might do. First, the reassurance. Then, the warning. Violet thought for a moment, then nodded and agreed. We went inside and filed the paperwork. We'd have to wait out the mandatory 30-day cooling-off period before we could get the final decree. When we walked out of the courthouse, Cole was still waiting by the entrance. He had come with Violet, so naturally, he expected her to give him a ride back. But Violet, probably trying to show me she was serious about changing, said, Cole, I'll just call an Uber for you. I saw his face fall just for a second. When I got home, Violet was already there. "Where's our daughter?" I asked. "She's at my mom's." "Frank," she said hesitantly, Can we still live together?" She rushed to explain. "It's not easy for you to take care of her alone, and your mom's getting older. We can't have her watching the baby all the time." I hesitated. My family had done well. We sold some land to a developer years ago, netting 5 houses and a few million in cash. My share of the rental income alone was about $50,000 a year, and my writing brought in another 100,000 or so. In our town, we were more than comfortable. Violet, with her tenured teaching job, made about $70,000 a year, including bonuses. But hiring a full-time, live-in nanny would be a huge expense, at least $12,000 a month, and there was no guarantee they'd be good. You hear too many horror stories about nannies abusing kids when the parents are away. Plus, I hated the idea of a stranger in my house. It was true that having Violet around was the safest option for our daughter. My dad still worked, and my mom's bad back meant she could only handle the baby for a day or two at a time. If I had to take care of her full-time myself, my writing would stop, and my income would dry up. The rent money was enough for me to live on, but our daughter's standard of living would take a hit. "You can stay," I finally said, "but from now on, we sleep in separate rooms." "Okay," she agreed without argument. "One more thing," I added. "Give me Cole Gardner's work address and home address." Her face changed, and she looked nervous. "What do you want that for?" I let out a cold snort. "So that the next time you're out messing around, I know where to find you, at his company and at his home." She hesitated. I pressed my advantage. "What? Are you actually planning to keep seeing him?" That did it. She immediately gave me all the information. To make me believe her, she explained that Cole used to work in a big city where housing was too expensive. His family was pressuring him to get married, but he couldn't afford a place or find a suitable partner there. So he moved back here, bought a house, and she was simply acting as his driver a few times. She swore they hadn't crossed any lines. Sometimes, I just don't get how a woman's mind works. If you don't love your husband anymore, just ask for a divorce. Be civil about it. If you care about your family, then why are you sneaking around with another man? Lying to your husband to hang out with some other guy, and then saying it's nothing. Who, besides a complete doormat, would ever believe that? It's just crazy. I didn't go pick up my daughter. Instead, I want to find my cousin Rick. Every family has one. That relative who's basically allergic to work and still mooching off his parents. His dad is my grandma's brother. Rick's in his early 40s, spent his youth gambling, and is still living at home. I found him and laid it all out. I wanted his help teaching Cole Gardner a lesson. After I explained the situation, he was immediately on board, ready to help me get revenge. I wasn't about to screw over family, so I made him an offer, $2,000 for his trouble, and if he got into any legal trouble, another $5,000. He didn't refuse. We both put on masks and headed straight for Cole's office. Big corporations usually have tight security, but clearly, Cole's company wasn't one of them. We found him at his desk. According to the nameplate, he was an operations manager. My cousin Rick walked right up and swept everything off Cole's desk, computer, papers, coffee mug, sending it all crashing to the floor. Then he roared, "Come and see, everyone. We got a homewrecker here." Even with a mask on, Cole recognized me. He looked completely shocked. The idiot probably thought his little display of fake remorse at the courthouse meant I'd let him off the hook. Anyone who knowingly hangs out alone with a married woman is not innocent. As his colleagues started to gather, Cole panicked. His job was on the line. He lunged forward, trying to clamp a hand over my cousin's mouth. Rick, a veteran of countless bar brawls, expertly turned his head so it looked like Cole had slapped him. "You dare hit me?" Rick yelled, then drove a fist straight into Cole's stomach. Having been a brawler for decades, my cousin knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum pain while ensuring the injury would be classified as minor in a police report. Cole doubled over, gasping for air. My job was to run interference. I stepped in front of the people trying to rush to Cole's aid, waving my arms frantically. "Stop! Stop! Don't fight!" I shouted, effectively blocking their path. The commotion finally brought out Cole's boss, a stern-looking middle-aged man. The sternness, however, was reserved for his employees. "What is going on here?" he demanded. "Boss, it's a misunderstanding," Cole choked out. I wasn't about to let him off the hook. "This guy seduced my wife," I announced as boss. "I'm here to settle the score." "What do you want?" the boss asked me. I shook my head slowly. "I haven't decided yet. But see, I'm a landlord. I don't have a job to go to. I've got all the time in the world. I could come here every day and yell at him. I could put up banners downstairs. Maybe I'll stop when I'm not angry anymore. Who knows when that will be?" The boss's face turned grim. He looked at Cole and said, "You're fired." If I came to cause a scene every day, he wouldn't be able to run his business. What a great boss. Citing the damage to the company's reputation, he didn't even offer Cole a severance package. Frank, are you insane? Cole cornered me outside his now former office, his eyes bloodshot, looking like he wanted to eat me alive. All she did was help me move some boxes. You had to come to my company and ruin my life? Are you happy now? Are you proud of yourself? He'd been with that company for nearly 7 years. He fought hard for the chance to manage this new branch in his hometown, and his ass had barely warmed the chair before I got him fired. Cut the crap, I shot back. You asked another man's wife to help you move? Who the hell do you think you are? How about you have your future wife come over and clean my house for me? Oh, that's right. I heard from Violet you're too broke to get a wife, so you have to resort to seducing other people's. You just wait, he snarled. I'm not letting this go. You brought someone to assault me. I'm calling the police. He dialed 911, and the police arrived shortly. At the station, Cole claimed that my cousin and I had stormed in and attacked him. I countered that he had seduced my wife, that I had only come to yell at him, and that he had thrown the first punch. My cousin Rick claimed he was just there to back me up, afraid I'd get bullied. Cops are human too. When they heard Cole had been messing with a married woman, the way they looked at him changed. But they had to follow procedure. They reviewed the office security footage. The video clearly showed that while my cousin had knocked stuff off the desk, Cole was the one who made the first physical move. I was just standing off to the side, trying to break it up. Next came the medical examinations. Cole had minor bruises. My cousin Rick, however, had taken a punch to the nose, resulting in a fractured nasal bone. A minor fracture, but technically a more severe injury than Cole's. If this went to court, Cole would likely have to pay my cousin tens of thousands in damages. Since it was a civil dispute, the police recommended we settle it privately. After some back-and-forth negotiation between Rick and Cole paid my cousin $30,000, and they signed a mediation agreement. I felt bad that Rick had gotten hurt and was planning to give him some extra money. But he pulled me aside and told me on the sly that he did it on purpose. He used to run scams like that all the time, but had stopped a while back so his dad wouldn't worry. Since he was short on cash, and it was for my sake, he figured he'd make a little profit. In the end, after a lot of arguing, he only accepted the original $2,000 I'd promised him. When I got home, Violet was already back and had picked up our daughter from my mom's. I hadn't told my mother about the divorce yet, so she wouldn't have thought anything of it. Most people of her generation are all about reconciliation, not divorce. Unless I showed her undeniable proof, like a video of them kissing, she would have 100% told me to give Violet another chance. So, my plan was to finalize the divorce first and then break the news. I had Violet under control for now. She was too ashamed to admit her mistake to anyone. Once the divorce decree was in hand, I'd deal with the family fallout. For the first time in ages, she had cooked dinner. After we ate, she quietly cleared the table and went to do the dishes. I put our daughter in her playpen and went to my study to write. Divorce or no divorce, I couldn't miss my deadlines. The dark fantasy novel I was working on was getting decent reads. If I could push it past 1 million views, I could probably take a year or 2 off after finishing it. When I finished writing for the night, Violet was still awake, clearly waiting to talk to me. Cole called me, she said, her voice low. He said he got him fired and had someone beat him up. A cold laugh escaped my lips. What? You feel sorry for your lover now? The color drained from her face. No, that's not it. I just feel like he didn't really do anything. Isn't this going too far? When he was seducing another man's wife, did he ever stop to think if his actions were going too far? I snapped. And don't give me that we were innocent crap. Unless you were the one who deliberately seduced him and hid the fact that you were married, he's not clean in this. I didn't, she retorted, her voice rising instinctively at the words deliberately seduced. She nearly woke our daughter. I shot her a glare, then picked up our sleeping child and carried her to my room. A month passed like that. Violet and I were like roommates living under the same roof. I never spoke to her unless I had to. She started coming home on time every day, as if she'd cut off all social contact, her life revolving only around our home. But it didn't change my mind about the divorce. On the day we were to get the final decree, she tried to talk me out of it. I have no patience for pointless arguments. I cut her off with a single sentence. If you hadn't called me that day to question me on Cole's behalf, maybe I would have reconsidered our relationship. I paused, letting the blame settle squarely on her shoulders. Now, I need a lot more time to trust you again. After that, she had nothing left to say. Time flew by. 1.5 years later, on the day our daughter started kindergarten, I packed up all of Violet's belongings, hired a moving company, and had everything sent to her parents' house. When she came home that evening, she found her closets empty and the front door lock changed. Frank, what are you doing? She cried through the door. What do you mean? Did you forget we're divorced? I said from the other side. Our daughter is in kindergarten now. I can handle drop-offs and pick-ups myself. I don't need you anymore. You can go back to your parents' place. But we were doing so well, she stammered. For the last year and a half, I've come home on time every day. I haven't had any contact with Cole. Haven't you forgiven me yet? Forgive you? Do you think what you did is something that can just be forgiven? I yelled back. If her daughter wasn't so young and I had someone to watch her, I would have kicked you out a year and a half ago. Ignoring her sobbing, I locked the deadbolt and called her father to come and get her. Our daughter started crying, wailing for her mommy. I had already prepared my speech. Mommy made a mistake, so Daddy and Mommy have to live apart now. I told her, hating the manipulative words coming out of my mouth. You have to choose if you want to live with Daddy or Mommy. If you stay with Daddy, Mommy can come visit you anytime. But if you go with Mommy, you won't have a daddy anymore. Threatening my own child. I felt like a scumbag, but I couldn't get over it. Forgiving an unfaithful wife isn't a one-time event. It's something you have to do over and over again, every time you remember. Maybe Violet never physically cheated, but during that month she was secretly meeting Cole. Her heart had definitely strayed. The only difference between an emotional affair and a physical one is time. The little girl wanted her mommy, but she wanted her daddy too. In the end, she gave in. Kids are smart. Her new kindergarten was the same one where Violet worked. She could see her mom every day at school, but if she chose to live with her mom, she wouldn't see her dad. She couldn't bear to lose either of us. Violet cried outside the door for a long time before her father finally came and took her away. Cole Gardner was getting engaged. This was excellent news. I never planned on just letting him off the hook. I'm not some billionaire CEO from a novel. My power is limited. I could have him shipped off to some godforsaken place. But I can be petty. A gentleman's revenge can wait 10 years. A petty man's revenge starts immediately. He ruined my marriage, so I was going to ruin his. I got his address from Violet a long time ago. I bribed a few of the elderly women in his neighborhood, telling them I'd give them $2,000 if they let me know the day Cole had a big event at his house. For women who would queue up at dawn for a carton of discount eggs, it was an offer they couldn't refuse. Today was Cole's engagement party. I got the text from my contact and showed up early with a megaphone, waiting in my car near his house. After confirming it was indeed an engagement procession, I followed the line of cars to the hotel. At the entrance, a large photo of the bride-to-be looked vaguely familiar. I probably knew her, but I couldn't place the face. Whatever. Not important. I was saving her from a scumbag. I was basically doing a good deed. I wore a mask and found a seat in a dark corner, stashing the megaphone under the table. When the host took the stage, I grabbed it, rushed onto the platform, and began my speech. Over the past year and a half, I'd pieced together the full story about Violet and Cole from her and my former father-in-law. They had a thing in high school, and when the school called their parents about their suspected relationship, it turned into a soap opera. My ex-father-in-law discovered that Cole was the son of his wife's first love. After Cole's mother died in childbirth, his father had apparently tried to get back with my ex-mother-in-law, leading to several fights between the two men. It was a full-blown family feud. My ex-father-in-law had forced Violet to break things off with Cole, threatening to disown her. He then watched her like a hawk, even through college, to make sure they never spoke again. The pressure made Violet withdrawn and depressed for years, which is why she never dated before me. Then she was pushed into the blind date with me. We hit it off, and her father thought the whole Cole business was ancient history. He never imagined the guy would resurface after Violet was married. Violet had also confessed to me that she felt a lingering sense of injustice over how her father had torn them apart. So when Cole found her, she didn't refuse him right away. She agreed to help him set up his new apartment, thinking of it as a way to find closure, a final chapter to a childhood dream. She even swore on her mother's life that nothing physical had happened between them. This groom, I boomed through the megaphone, my voice echoing through the banquet hall, was seducing my wife just a year ago. Is this really the kind of scumbag you want to marry? The room fell silent. They say a dog always returns to its vomit. Marry a guy like this, and you'll be wearing a whole closet full of green hats. For all you know, the bride's already been cheated on. People started rushing the stage to drag me off. My objective was complete. I dodged and weaved through the chaos and made a break for the exit. I hadn't printed out photos or mentioned Violet's name. We all lived in the same city, and bad news travels fast. This was enough. I had to protect my daughter from the fallout of her mother's ruined reputation. If the bride was a fool in love and insisted on marrying him anyway, I'd just have to start harassing her next. As I passed the bride, I leaned in and whispered, "Every word I said is true. If I'm lying, may all my instant ramen packets come without seasoning." To my shock, she reached out and ripped my mask off. I covered my face and fled. That afternoon, I got a call from my ex-father-in-law. Cole and his family had stormed over to their house to cause trouble. By the time I arrived, a furious Cole charged at me and threw a punch. I was ecstatic. I leaned right into it, letting his fist connect with my nose. Blood gushed everywhere. Violet and her father rushed to shield me as I calmly lay on the ground and dialed 911. After a trip to the ER and a formal police report, a few months later, I was $30,000 richer from the assault settlement, and Cole Gardner was the proud recipient of a 1-year stay in the county jail. With Cole behind bars, I finally felt like I had exhaled a breath I'd been holding for 2 years. Violet's look for me was now a mix of fear and awe. She never mentioned getting back together again. She just wanted me to stop. If I kept this up, even if she was innocent, all of her relatives would be convinced she'd had an affair. Then, something unexpected happened. A woman showed up at my door. "Frank Miller, get out here." "Who are you?" I asked, opening the door. The woman standing there was wearing a white sundress. She was slim with a delicate face, a certified beauty. I couldn't place her. "It's me, Zoe Reed." My mind blanked. "Your high school classmate? You crashed my wedding not too long ago. Did you forget me that quickly?" "Zoe, it was you. You were the bride." The pieces clicked into place. "Your makeup was so heavy that day, I didn't even recognize you. We used to call you Dumbo because of your ears." In high school, her ears stuck out, so that was her nickname. "Go to hell," she said, kicking me lightly in the shin. "And don't call me that. So what can I do for you?" She put her hands on her hips. "You ruined my wedding. What do you think I want? You came to thank me?" I replied, completely unfazed. She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, right. You helped me identify a scumbag, so this humble maiden has come to offer herself in return." "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't mess with me," I said, taking a step back. "I'm a divorced single dad. What did you possibly see in me?" Zoe's family background was a mystery to me, but she was an only child, just like Violet. With her looks, she could easily find someone else. "What else?" "I'm into guys who get cheated on, apparently." "Wait, I helped you dodge a bullet, and now you're holding it against me?" "I'm serious," she said, her expression changing. Then she told me her story. She'd had a serious boyfriend in college. They did long distance after graduation, while she worked on convincing her parents to let her move to his city. When she finally got their blessing, she decided to surprise him. She showed up at his apartment unannounced and walked in on a scene that would be burned in her memory forever. Her boyfriend was engaged in a bizarre fetish scene involving milk and another woman. She broke up with him on the spot. After a few years of healing, she gave in to her parents' pressure and started dating again. She found Cole, who seemed like a safe, down-to-earth guy. And then he turned out to be another scumbag. She was, in her words, a jerk magnet. Now she was 29, her engagement was off, and her parents were already pushing her back into the dating scene. She was terrified of meeting another bad guy. So she thought of me. A guy who's been cheated on isn't likely to do the same to someone else, right? I was silent for a moment, weighing her proposal. Seeing me hesitate, she added, "And don't worry, I'll treat your daughter like my own." I narrow my eyes. "You're a damn good judge of character." After I agreed, Zoe practically dragged me to the courthouse to get a marriage license. Luckily, since I wore a mask when I crashed her wedding, none of her relatives knew it was me. Even if a few thought I looked familiar, they weren't rude enough to bring it up. The day before the wedding, Violet asked to meet me at a coffee shop downstairs. I cleared it with Zoe and went. Violet looked exhausted. "I heard you're getting married. Congratulations." "Thanks." She hesitated. "Since you're getting married, could you give me custody of our daughter?" I was surprised. "Why? Having a child would make it harder for you to remarry, wouldn't it?" Violet shook her head. "I don't think I'll ever get married again. If you give me our daughter, I promise I'll stay single for the rest of my life." "I'm sorry," I said, shaking my head. "I have no right to stop you from seeing her, but if we went to court, considering my financial situation, I would still get full custody. I love my daughter more than anything. If I didn't, I wouldn't have gone after Cole so relentlessly while letting Violet off relatively easy, all to keep our daughter's life free of scandal. Is there no room for discussion?" "I wouldn't even ask for child support," she pressed. "You don't have to pay child support now if you don't want to," I replied, standing firm. She fell silent. Just before we parted ways, she asked me one last question. "Frank, when you married me, was it because you loved me, or was it just because it was the right thing to do?" A sudden gust of wind blew a strand of hair across her face. Through it, she read my lips as I formed the silent answer. "Love. Wait, how are you a virgin?" I asked, pointing at the telltale red stain on the bedsheets, staring at Zoe in disbelief. "I never married those other 2 guys, did I?" "So of course I am," she said, pinching my arm in protest. I leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Okay, then I'll be gentle." Inside my head, I was screaming. I hit the jackpot. I wasn't a virgin anymore myself, so I had no such expectations for a second wife. But Zoe had just given me the most incredible surprise. A year later, I heard Cole was out of prison. Worried he might try to get revenge, I asked my cousin Rick to keep an eye on him for a while. After all, I had destroyed his career, ruined his engagement, and married his fiancée. The move turned out to be more effective than I could have imagined. The moment Cole saw my cousin, he reacted like a rabbit seeing a hawk. He sold his house, packed up his dad, and skipped town. In the years that followed, Zoe and I had another daughter. My older girl adored her little sister, constantly asking why her hands were so tiny and when she would be big enough to play. Zoe, true to her word, treated both of them with equal love. Violet never remarried, just as she'd said. Whenever she wanted to see our daughter, she'd take her to her parents' house for the weekend. As our younger daughter got a little older, Violet would even watch both of them for a bit, giving Zoe and me time for a date night. Side story: Violet's perspective. Reader discretion advised. This section attempts to explain the character's actions. If you prefer her to remain the villain, please skip. My name is Violet Hayes. I am a product of a classic, high-pressure American upbringing. From a very young age, my life outside of school was a blur of tutoring, extracurriculars, and endless homework. My mother was relentlessly demanding. If I made it into the top 10 of my class, she'd push me to be number one. When I became number one in the class, she wanted me to be number one in the entire grade. I went through the classic stages: resistance, rebellion, failed rebellion, compromise, and finally, numbness. That pretty much sums up my life before my senior year of high school. When it came to college applications, my parents were more invested than I was. My mother's mantra was a constant refrain in my ears: just study hard, get into a good school, and then your life will be easy. She repeated it so often the words lost all meaning. Every time I'd snap that she was distracting me, she'd sigh, fine, I won't say another word. You're all grown up now, you get annoyed when I say anything. And then, the next day, and the day after that, the mantra would continue. The pressure of senior year was already immense. My parents' expectations were the final straw, pushing me to the brink of a breakdown. That's when Cole Gardner appeared. One day, I was just sitting in the empty classroom after school, unable to bring myself to go home. He was passing by and peeked in. Hey, shouldn't you be heading home? I ignored him at first, but he was persistent, asking if something was wrong. Under his gentle questioning, and because I desperately needed an emotional outlet, I poured out all my frustrations. He was a patient listener, quietly hearing me out and offering some comforting words. I felt much better afterward. As we parted, he told me I could always find him if I felt down again. I needed that outlet so badly. In the weeks that followed, I would occasionally seek him out to vent. When a teenage boy and girl spend that much time together, a certain ambiguity is bound to develop. I sensed he was developing feelings for me. But before he could ever confess them, our parents were called into the school. When I found out his father was my mother's high school sweetheart, I felt like I was in a bizarre sitcom. It was just too ridiculous. My father, completely losing his composure, got into a physical fight with his dad in the principal's office, convinced that Cole was a plant sent by his father to sabotage my grades as revenge for stealing my mother all those years ago. My dad has such a flair for the dramatic. He really missed his calling as a screenwriter. From that day on, my father guarded me like a hawk, ensuring Cole and I never had a chance to speak again. Under his intense pressure, my romance ended before it even began. That's why, when I met Frank, I told him I'd never really dated anyone. It was the truth. I got into a good university, and my parents were ecstatic. When other parents praised their parenting skills and asked for advice, they beamed with pride. They would then eagerly share their philosophy of tough love and high expectations. I often wondered if any of those poor, unlucky parents actually took their advice. I'd say a silent prayer for their kids. I was happy too. No more endless tutoring, no more mountains of homework. My dad even gave me a generous allowance to go on a trip that summer. He insisted I couldn't leave the state, worried for my safety, but compared to the previous 15 years of my life, it felt like paradise. As it turned out, I was celebrating too early. My 4 years in college were relatively pleasant. My mom would call frequently to remind me not to get a boyfriend, and my dad would show up once a semester to check in, but none of it could dampen my enjoyment of college life. Who needed a boyfriend anyway? My dorm bed was comfortable, the food court near campus was amazing, and I was perfectly happy on my own. At the end of my junior year, I decided I wanted to stay in the city where I went to college, get a job, and maybe, just maybe, climb the corporate ladder and become a successful career woman. I felt I owed it to myself after all those years of hard work. The ideal was beautiful, but reality was harsh. The moment I told my parents my plan, They took an overnight train to see me and spent the entire time persuading me to abandon the idea. They wanted me to come home after graduation and become a teacher. They brainwashed me with their iron rice bowl theory, the idea that a stable, tenured job is the ultimate goal. There are moments when you're so speechless, you can only be speechless. If my ultimate goal was to become a teacher, what was the point of all that hard work? I could have gone to a less competitive school and still become a teacher. Did I get into a top university just so they could have bragging rights? It turned out, yes, that was exactly it. You'll be free after you get into college is the biggest lie parents tell their children. Those 4 years were just a temporary furlough from the prison of their expectations. Unless you have the courage to cut off all ties with your parents, it's nearly impossible to escape the influence of your family of origin. And I, quite clearly, did not have that kind of courage. I did as my parents wished. I finished my degree and got my teaching certification for a kindergarten position. I could have been a high school teacher, but my mother vetoed it, saying it was too stressful and would make it impossible to take care of a family once I got married. At that moment, I felt like I was right back in high school, being manipulated by my parents. Just like with the tutoring, they never asked if I wanted it. As long as they thought it was a good idea, that was all that mattered. Once the job was settled, the next step was marriage. I was terrified of it. My parents were the picture of a happy couple in public, but at home, they constantly bickered over the smallest things. After putting it off for as long as I could, I finally caved under the pressure from my entire extended family. Aunts and uncles all became matchmakers, telling me that a woman's value on the dating market drops as she gets older, that my mom knew best, and that refusing to go on a blind date was as good as committing a mortal sin. So, I compromised again. I'd been compromising my whole life. What was one more time? When I found out my blind date was a community college graduate whose family had gotten rich from a land sale, I immediately pictured a crude, uncultured nouveau riche type. But in my mother's eyes, he was the perfect match. First, his family was wealthy. A net worth of a couple million in our small town meant you were set for life. Second, his lower education level meant that I would obviously be the one in charge of the household. I had no idea how she came to that conclusion. A lack of a degree doesn't mean a lack of intelligence. When we met, perhaps because my expectations were so low, my first impression of Frank was surprisingly good. He was handsome in a gentle, bookish way, about 6 feet tall, with a solid build and black frame glasses. He was nothing like the slob I had imagined. I think I'll remember that moment for the rest of my life. He sat across from me, looking a little shy, scratching the back of his head as he confessed that his dad had forced him to be there. In that instant, I felt a wave of kinship. I had found my comrade in arms. Once the ice was broken, we couldn't stop talking. The more we talked, the more we realized how many hobbies we shared. The only difference was that my hobbies were just hobbies, while Frank actually pursued his. When I learned he was 3 years younger than me, my first thought was whether he would think I was too old. But his eyes seemed to see right through me. He casually remarked, "They say an older woman knows what she wants. If we started dating, could I call you my older sister?" I shot him a playful glare and dismissed my worries. After we exchanged numbers, he started texting me. Not the boring, "Hey, what's up?" kind of text, but direct invitations to go out on the weekend, discussing fun places to go. Sometimes I wondered if he was some kind of player in disguise. But then he'd say something completely clueless, like the time he was staring at my legs. When I shyly asked what he was looking at, he replied, "The muscle on your thigh just jiggled." It was really funny. God, I wanted to punch him. In the 4 months we dated, I think I went out more than I had in the previous 20 years combined. I truly fell in love with him. I didn't even refuse him when he wanted to take our relationship to the next level. Unfortunately, we were both complete novices. The moment I cried out in pain, he would freeze, too scared to move. We tried a few times, but he never managed to get further than some awkward fumbling. But good times are always fleeting. After a few quiet months, my parents started their meddling again. They wanted to know how things were going with Frank. When I told them we were serious, they pushed me to ask him when he planned to marry me. At their insistence, I texted Frank. He replied that it was up to me. If I want to get married soon, we could do it the next year, since you had to book venues so far in advance. If I wasn't in a hurry, we could wait until the year after. I was both happy and sad. Happy because he was a responsible man who wasn't just playing around. Sad because I knew my parents would never agree to wait another year. I cherished our dating life and didn't want it to end so soon. But I had no choice. I relayed my parents' wishes to Frank, a meeting between our families to discuss a wedding date. He readily agreed. Just before winter break, we took our first and last trip before the engagement. We went to the mountains in Colorado, and in a cozy cabin in a town with a ridiculously romantic name, I gave myself to him completely. He whispered mischievously in my ear, over and over, I want to be your knight in shining armor. Writers really do have a way with cheesy lines. After the engagement came the wedding planning. Engagement photos, wedding planners, dress fittings, a whirlwind of tasks that left no time for fun trips. My heart felt a little empty. But the thought of our honeymoon, he promised to take me to see the northern lights in Iceland after the wedding, gave me something to look forward to. I'd never been out of the country before. Life, however, is full of surprises. 3 months before our trip, I found out I was pregnant. The news didn't fill me with joy. My first thought was the trip. The flight to Iceland alone was a long haul. There was no way I could do that while pregnant. This might be my only chance to travel abroad for years, maybe even a decade. I wanted to have an abortion, recover, and then have a baby after our honeymoon. I told Frank my idea. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, but in the end, he agreed. But fate had other plans. At the clinic, I ran into a relative who found out I was pregnant. He told my parents, who immediately called, demanding to know why I hadn't told them such big news. I had no choice but to tell my mom about my plan to terminate the pregnancy. She rushed over to stop me, bringing my mother-in-law with her. Frank had managed to get his mom on our side, but my mother was a brick wall. In the end, we canceled the flights and the tour. I stayed home and focused on a healthy pregnancy. 9 months later, I gave birth to a daughter via C-section. The recovery was brutal. After the birth, I became incredibly dependent on Frank, but his attention was now almost entirely on our daughter. It left me feeling a little lost. As our daughter grew, I was once again forced to compromise with life. The woman who used to put on makeup before leaving the house slowly disappeared, replaced by a tired mom who shuttled between work and home. My parents both worked and couldn't help much with the baby. My mother-in-law, despite her own health issues, came over every day to help with cooking, and I was grateful. But Frank would disappear into his study to write as soon as I got home, not emerging until 11 at night. We were a loving couple living under the same roof, yet we barely exchanged a few words a day. I knew he was feeling the financial pressure of having a child. I could have tolerated the darkness if I had never seen the light. But having been nourished by Frank's love, this monotonous, predictable life felt like a daily torment. What made it worse was that I saw the look in his eyes change. In the beginning, there was a shyness when he looked at me. After I gave myself to him, his eyes were filled with passion. He was like a puppy in heat, wanting me whenever and wherever he could. Now, his gaze was calm, placid, devoid of any emotion. I hated it. I wanted his fiery love, not a partnership that felt like we were just roommates co-parenting. So, I stopped going straight home after work. I went to the mall to buy new clothes, got my hair done, invested in skincare. I wanted to see that look of awe in Frank's eyes again. I never expected to run into Cole Gardner. It had been years, and I had almost forgotten about him, but he recognized me instantly. He had changed a lot. The biggest difference was his eyes. They no longer had that innocent high school glint. Now, they held a predatory hunger, a look that made me feel like he wanted to devour me. It was a dirty look, but I perversely enjoyed it. It was proof that I was still attractive. He was overly familiar, asking about my life. I gave him short, non-committal answers. After a few minutes, I said I had to get home. When he learned I had my own car, he asked for a ride. At that moment, I'm not sure what I was thinking. Maybe it was guilt over how my father had treated his. I agreed. In the car, he casually mentioned that if my father hadn't intervened back then, I might have been his wife now. I wasn't some naive girl. I knew exactly what he was doing. He knew I was married and was looking for a consequence-free fling. Men love other men's wives because there's no commitment. I despised him for it. And yet, when he started criticizing my parents' controlling nature, validating all the resentment I'd held for years, I felt a secret, guilty thrill. So when he asked if I could help him move in the coming days, I hesitated for a moment, and then, inexplicably, I agreed. When I got home, Frank glanced at me. I'm sure he noticed my new hairstyle and clothes, but he said nothing, just disappeared back into his study to write. It was a huge blow to my ego. The next day, Cole asked for my help again. Since I'd already agreed, I drove over and picked him up. He still looked at me with that same obsessive gaze. The validation I failed to get from Frank, I found in Cole. That small bit of satisfaction made me accept his next few invitations. But each time, I only dropped him off at his door. A woman alone needs to be careful. I was afraid of what might happen if I went inside. After all, I only wanted some emotional reassurance from him. I had a daughter and a husband. I would never do something to destroy my family. I probably saw Cole 5 or 6 times. Then came that night when Frank was all over me, a desperate, wild passion that left me more satisfied than I had been in years. I thought my efforts to look good had finally worked. Cole, the tool, was no longer needed. The next time he asked for help, I planned to tell him clearly that we needed to stop seeing each other. Since nothing had happened between us, I wasn't afraid of him making a scene. I never imagined Frank would follow me. He saw me leaving Target with Cole, attacked him, and immediately accused me of cheating, demanding a divorce. I tried desperately to explain, but he wouldn't believe me, not even when I swore on my own life. He took the video of us to my parents, and my dad, seeing Cole's face, slapped me, instantly convinced I was guilty. At that point, my mind was a mess. I kept thinking nothing happened. If I could just explain it, he would forgive me. In my panic, I made another terrible decision. I brought Cole to the courthouse to explain things to Frank. It wasn't until much later that I realized how stupid that was, especially when Cole claimed he was my first love when we had never even dated. Frank offered me a chance. If I agreed to the divorce first, he would be willing to give us an opportunity to rebuild our trust. He told me not to push him. I felt I had no choice, so I signed the papers. His agreement to let me continue living at home gave me a sliver of hope that we could fix things. But then, the very next day, he went and got Cole fired. When I found out, I thought Cole may have had bad intentions, but he never got anything from me. Was getting him fired going too far? I mentioned it to Frank. He shot back. What? You feel sorry for your lover? I realized I'd said the wrong thing again. I immediately blocked Cole's number and cut off all contact. For the next year and a half, though Frank never touched me, he wasn't hostile either. He still gave me money every month for our daughter's clothes and formula. I thought that, eventually, he would accept me again. I never expected that on our daughter's first day of kindergarten, he would kick me out and have my father come pick me up like a piece of unwanted luggage. I cried for a long time before I remembered what he had said at the courthouse. The most important thing between a husband and wife is trust. The moment I found out you lied to me, that trust was gone. I'm only 26. I have a long life ahead of me, and I don't want to spend the rest of it drowning in suspicion and misery. I finally understood. He had made his decision way back then. Later, after Cole came to our house and caused a scene, I found out that Frank had also ruined his wedding. Cole didn't know where Frank lived, but his father knew where my parents lived, so they came to our door. That confrontation not only cost Cole a hefty settlement, but also landed him in jail. Not long after, I heard Frank was getting remarried. After some digging, I discovered that the woman was Cole's ex-fiancée. A wave of jealousy washed over me. Even though I knew it was impossible, I couldn't help but wonder if they had gotten together before Frank and I were even divorced. It was then that I truly understood why Frank had insisted on the divorce. Once suspicion is born, the verdict is already in. The most important thing in a marriage is honesty. Regardless of my intentions, secretly meeting a man with whom I had a complicated past was something that could never be seen as innocent. If I, even after all this time, couldn't calmly accept another woman in his life, how could I have expected him to tolerate me meeting Cole behind his back? Unfortunately, I learned this lesson far too late, and my mistake was irreversible. To his credit, Frank was a decent man. In all his acts of revenge, he never dragged my name through the mud. When people asked, he would just say, "We weren't compatible." The day before his wedding, I met with him, afraid that his new wife wouldn't be good to our daughter. I wanted to discuss custody. As I expected, he refused, but he promised I could see her every week, so I didn't push it. I had learned by then that once Frank made a decision, a team of wild horses couldn't change his mind. Before the divorce, his easygoing nature was a product of his love for me. As we were leaving, I asked him if he had married me out of love or convenience. I already knew the answer. I just wanted to hear him say he loved me one last time. After Frank remarried, my parents started pressuring me to find someone new. This time, I stood firm, using the excuse that being a single mom would make it difficult to date, but the truth was I refused. For once, I would not be my parents' puppet, their obedient little girl. I gave them back the money they had given me, rented my own apartment, and slowly got used to living alone. I offered to pay child support, but Frank refused, saying his writing income had increased and he didn't need it. My own salary was more than enough to support myself. Frank's new wife is a wonderful person. My daughter adores her. At kindergarten, she proudly tells everyone she has two moms. I once overheard another kid tell her, "Your dad is awesome." I couldn't help but laugh, a genuine, heartfelt laugh. After saving up for 2 years, I took a solo trip to the country Frank and I were supposed to visit for our honeymoon. My English is terrible. I had to use a comical series of hand gestures just to buy a souvenir. But my heart was full. I knew I had finally escaped the cage that had confined me for nearly half my life.